Yes.
Yes, it brings me back to, absolutely, you were about to go there to, so if I walk into this Zoom room and I see someone such as yourself for the first time, what would I expect from a session? What do people need to know about what that might look like?
Yeah, so it's a good point, because obviously it's a very different space to in person. So I think the first thing to say would just be that, when you said in terms of barriers, tech is obviously, it's an amazing thing. It's letting us do this, but also it has its moments. Internet cuts out, power outages, all for whatever reason that these things happen. So generally we usually get, some contact details, and just to safeguard that process, so that if we do cut out, we know what we're doing. Perhaps we agree to give each other a call and check in and see if we want to continue, that kind of thing. Just means that we can sort of scaffold this session appropriately, as I said, if anything does happen. But if a person were to come and see myself or you or anyone at Expressive Therapy SA online, then we would begin with sort of an initial assessment, initial appointment, where we basically get to know each other. So you may have already filled out an intake form, you may have chatted to a few people already, but this time is kind of a dedicated time for us to chat about what's been going on. And because the way that we work, even if that assessment is technically, you come in wanting support for, say, your child or someone in your family or your family as a whole, we essentially do the same thing every time. We have either big pieces of paper and texters, or we have online versions, which thanks to tech, Shane will explain later. But we take collaborative notes together in some fashion. And in that we can do all kinds of different creative things to talk about strengths, to talk about what's been going on, your world, the child's world, kind of whatever's important to you, goals, how we might get there, what's happened in the past perhaps, and then kind of just the next steps of what we might do from there.
Okay, so that sounds pretty comprehensive. For that first session, then getting to know people, introductions, and then checking out that broad range of information. People have got a lot of expertise and all the expertise in their lives, and we're just trying to get a feel for what's taking place, what might they want us to work with them to support around.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Is there anything that people would need to bring with them? Is there anything that, how long will it last? What should they be prepared for themselves? Is there anything they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the requirements in terms of tech is mostly around having a microphone, a camera, and an ability to sort of see the other people that are on the call, meaning, that just helps to increase communication, gets things across better. If we can see each other, I mean, obviously if that's not completely possible, we might be able to work around it. But generally that's what's advised, especially with Zoom. Other than that, if you've got kids there, then that's another thing around. Generally, I usually say, what's their most favorite stuff? Bring it in, like they want to show it off, show me your favorite toy, do a drawing. So if kids are around and in that process, then, we want to cater to kids' language, which is play. So we want to have some kind of play element. So as I said before, like I've got my texts and my paper here. So maybe I'll say, I'm going to draw my favorite food. I'm going to hold it up and they can guess it. And then they can draw their favorite food and hold it up and guess it. So it's just part of that initial rapport building, which, depending on what we come to at the end of the assessment and when the therapist, whoever that might be, goes away and makes the therapy plan. If that's involving expressive therapy specifically, then that's kind of heading more in that direction around play and how to do that online, which I can talk a bit about later. But if it's heading more in the family therapy direction or both maybe, then it goes in a different way. And then we also have the SSP, which can be facilitated online as well in a similar way. So there's a few different, paths that we can go down, or multiple paths, all of which can be facilitated online. And really, you would only need the basics of what does your child enjoy, what's important to them. And if it's an adult, maybe have a really special cuddly soft toy that, makes you feel better when you talk about hard stuff. You can kind of bring in anything. And that's the benefit of being in your own space too, is that you've got what you want there, like I've got my drink and whatnot. So we all have our special things. So luckily they're in range for us when we're at home.
Right. And you mentioned the tech, and I think nearly everybody's got one of these things that never leave our side. So Zoom works on here as well, that's right?
Yeah, that's right. And thankfully as well, as we were just exploring previous to this call, we've got some really cool tech stuff around. Instead of having just the paper sheets where we can take notes, we can also do it on Zoom itself through this function called Whiteboard. And that can actually be a collaborative tool as well. So it's not just us making the notes, but it's also everybody else on the call, whether that's 10 different callers from 10 different locations. Everyone can make a squiggle and cross something out or add something, and have kind of, I guess, their expressive input to that process.
And so in session, in person, I know that sometimes our sessions, they might last for an hour. Sometimes sessions last for an hour, 90 minutes. And there's still some variation as well, depending on who's in the room. When we're thinking of younger children, we don't really extend that time out so much. It's hard for younger children to stay engaged and not to be overwhelmed and exhausted. How long do the sessions last for? Would we be planning them online?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for an assessment session, we do want to make sure we have enough time to cover everything and for everyone to kind of have a voice within that process. But we also know that screens in general are pretty fatiguing for everyone, and that perhaps generally our tolerance is sort of slightly lower than it would be in person, even just in the way that you're sitting still and like looking at a screen, and I guess maybe a bit more like cognitively engaged, thinking about things. So I think there's a tendency to shorten the session slightly, and I think that's really for everyone's benefit. So perhaps maybe the assessment looking around 60 minutes, and then for sessions with younger children, they'll be quite highly scaffolded, which I'll get to in a moment, but you might be looking anywhere between 20 minutes and maybe maximum 60 minutes, but probably more common is about 45 minutes.